VIBErations podcast, episode 53, Pete Millward. Hi, I'm Gary Brightman, and this is my periodic podcast called VIBErations. Established in 2018, Vibe is a book and music shop situated in Moi Wo on Lantau Island in Hong Kong. Happy New Year to all our customers and listeners. This week's interview is with a mate I've been pestering to interview with me since Vibe opened back in early 2018. At that time, high on my priority list was to add music to the bookshop. Although I'd accumulated a lot of vinyl and CDs, I wanted to feature local Hong Kong artists such as GDJYB, who I'd recently written and produced a documentary on after leaving film school. Mate Pete Millward lives on Lantau Island, and although I knew he worked for Drum Music, producing music for such big Hong Kong brands as Cathay Pacific, HSBC and HK Sevens, I hadn't heard his music under the guise of Celestial. He supplied me with his back catalogue, and I was immediately sold on it. Maybe because we were both born in 1960 and have the same musical references throughout our lives. Celestial is a Hong Kong-based collective whose unique sound resonates with the diversity of life in this city. Celestial was conceived by producer and guitarist Pete Millward, a co-founder of Drum Music along with Eddie Chung. Pete moved to Hong Kong in 1990 from South London, coming from a background playing in punk bands and recording reggae acts. Upon arrival, he was asked to write music for a leading fashion boutique for their compilation album. His unique fusion of Asian sounds with modern production techniques pioneered the emerging genre of Asian chill-out music, and the idea for Celestial was born. Pete, who produces, arranges, mixes, plays guitar, bass, melodica and keyboards, plus programming and various other bits of audio manipulation, is a long-time Hong Kong resident, with his musical roots in the punk and dub reggae of the 1970s. I like Celestial's music so much that I asked Pete if I could use it in my newly written and directed sci-fi series called Transformed back in 2014. Very generously, he said I could use any of his music in my work for free, just to credit Celestial, and I've been using his music in my sound beds ever since. Indeed, this very podcast uses a sample from a track Green Island Dub for its intro and outro. Pete's performed at Vibe with mate Mike Hill under the guise of Electro Mull, and also under the guise of Celestial. He recently performed at Clockenflap and also Lantau Live music festivals. To start with, I'm going to play a sample track from his latest album, Sub Coda. Welcome to Vibe, Pete.
Well, thank you for having me. It's very nice to come here. I've never been here before. That's a joke, by the way. I've been here many times.
Too many times. Do you have a favourite book or authors?
I have many favourite authors. And they've changed through my life. So when I was younger, I used to read George Orwell and Graham Greene, and then I got on to like Raymond Chandler and Ernest Hemingway, and
Yes.
But recently, for the last 20 years, I've been reading Haruki Murakami.
Okay, yeah.
Who's really great, and Cormac McCarthy as well, who got me into a whole slew of other Southern Gothic writers.
Okay. All right, do you have favourite musical artists?
Well, we're the same age, aren't we? So I think if you go back to when we were 20 years old, I think we probably like the same acts, right?
Yeah, absolutely. We got the same singles, haven't we?
The Clash, the Specials, Joy Division. But then I got into Philip Glass in the 80s, and I've listened to Philip Glass a lot, and you can probably hear it in my music.
Yes, I can.
It sounded very modern then. It still sounds very modern to me, but it's also very intimate and meditative.
Yeah.
So that's why I like it, and that's why it's affected my music.
Yeah. Okay.
But I've kind of got more into jazz as I got older as well. Miles Davis and and I've liked Nick Cave for like 25. Well, actually, I saw him in about 1980 in the birthday party. And then for the past, I don't know, nearly 30 years, I've been listening to his albums as Nick Cave and the Bad Seeds, which are really great. But you go back to the before punk and everything. I started listening to The Who and David Bowie and the Rolling Stones. I mean, David Bowie was massive, right? And he still is. I mean, in the last, after he died, or just after he died, I started listening to all of his recent stuff, and it's amazing.
Yeah.
It's really, all of those out there, the last 3 or 4 albums, every single one is absolutely incredible.
Yeah.
So I really got, I kind of felt bad that I hadn't listened to them when he first brought them out. It took that tragedy for me to go and listen to them.
Well, that's how music is, I think, because I did exactly the same thing as you. I binged him to death in the 70s and the early 80s, and then I switched off the Bowie switch. Probably a lot of us did when he came mainstream a little bit.
Well, after Let's Dance, we probably switched off, didn't we?
I think we both did at the same time, and then. I mean,
Let's Dance was like, wow, that's really great, and then after a while you go, you just somehow you moved on. But then I'm so glad I rediscovered him again, because the last few, particularly the stuff he did in the last 2 years of his life, when he had an idea that something was up, and it's incredible.
Absolutely. That Black Star album is haunting, isn't it?
Absolutely.
It's an almost tragic album, but it's one that you need to have in your life.
That's right. And, and it makes you think about life. I mean,
does.
That song, you can't take it with you, right? I mean, it's incredible stuff.
Yeah.
But, I mean, even there's the earlier one from a couple of albums earlier when he's talking about where are we now, and it's all about getting older and and realising what's important in life, and the chorus is as long as there's sun, as long as there's rain, that's right,
and ain't that true for all of us on this planet? Yeah, for sure.
But I mean, also in the 70s, I got into disco. Well, not really disco, funk, I suppose, more. I mean, I remember seeing Nile Rodgers in Chic on Top of the Pops. And at the same time, I was buying punk rock, and I just saw Nile Rodgers playing Le Freak, and it was that guitar riff was just wow. So I bought all of their records. And that
quietly,
kind of
probably, because you weren't allowed to like punk and disco.
And I kind of look back at the mods in the 60s who were soul fans. And so I kind of thought you had to you had to be aware of all kinds of music. And I had another mate who got me into reggae long before punk as well.
Yeah,
so we were listening to Bob Marley and various other things before punk rock came along. So it was, I was kind of used to it when the Clash started getting people into reggae. And
Paul Simmons
and then the Specials, of course. I mean, first time I saw the Specials, they were supporting the Clash at the Music Machine in Camden.
Oh man, doesn't get any better than that.
And they weren't two-tone. They were they were kind of glam punk, and they played a mixture of reggae and punk. Wow. Yeah, it was like
what a gig that was.
Yeah, and nobody had ever heard of them.
That was
we were going, who are these guys?
Yeah.
And the support act was Suicide from New York.
Oh, really?
The duo with the synthesizer and Frankie Teardrop, which was. And I thought they were amazing, and all the punks were spitting at them.
Yeah, well, as they would do, but that is one of those seminal gigs. Yeah, it's a perfect storm.
But I mean, also going back, I'm thinking about it now. It's like my brother, when he was 18. So I'm obviously younger than him, and he went to art school, and back then you got a grant from the government to go to college.
That's right. Yeah, absolutely.
And he didn't like art school because it was full of arty people who he thought they were. So he left, and he used his grant, and he bought a kit to build a synthesizer. From that you got from a Maplin catalogue, and it was the Maplin 4000 or something. I can't remember exactly. Yeah. But it had 4 oscillators, and you had to use this tiny little plug to get any sound out of it. You had to kind of plug in quite a few of these little plugs.
Brilliant.
And it took him about transistor. It took him about 6 months. It seems like about 6 months, but it was probably only about 6 weeks. But it took him ages to make it. Yeah. And then I learned how to use it as well. And then he got a 4-track tape machine, a TIAC, and so I started recording on that when I was 18. So that was like beginning of my learning process. And but I got into synthesizers then, and he was already into synthesizers. So he had Tangerine Dream and Kraftwerk, and he even got my dad into Tomita. My dad liked classical music.
Snowflakes Are Dancing,
Debussy, and then he did the Planet Suite as well. Yeah. And so I was into synthesizers from a young age, as well as reggae and disco and punk and.
It's not surprising, is it, that you've done what you've done?
I think all of those things you see in what I do now
came together. Yeah, absolutely. I can see all of that in your music.
Yeah, exactly.
I can see everything.
And I think. If you see the band Electromule that we're playing, Electromule, I should say it in the right way. We're playing it at Lantau Live on Sunday. That is specifically more of the synthesizer and punk side of it, whereas Celestial is more of the kind of dub and Philip Glass classical.
Yeah, the more chill, laid back.
But also synthesizers. So I mean, it's all all relevant, right? And you don't realise it at the time how much these things affect you, like 30 years later.
Yeah, absolutely. You tread those paths, don't you? That early learning doesn't leave you, even though.
No, well, the music you're into when you're a teenager stays with you forever.
Yeah, it does, doesn't it? In fact, in yours and my case, it really has in our 7-inch singles.
That's right. Whereas some of the other stuff I listened to in the 70s, or no, 80s actually, when I was like getting on close in late 20s, I've still got some of them, but they were, and at the time I thought they were really cool, but they were kind of dancey stuff, but I never listened to them.
No.
I can't even remember how they went.
You kind of know what's going to stick, don't you? Yeah. Even if it's subliminally at the time, and it's okay. I get where you're from now on everything, really. Okay, so let's move on to favourite film.
Yeah, well, again, it's like I'd put so many films in there, but number one is probably Blade Runner.
Yeah,
but I mean
the original Blade Runner.
Yeah,
you mean?
And again, it's got so many of the same. The Clash are in it as extras. Yeah, and then Vangelis does the soundtrack, and it's like classic synthesizer soundtrack. So
it is, isn't it?
But at the same time, it's so emotional and touching. So that little bit when he's playing when he's sitting by the piano and he just goes, dong, and it's part of the soundtrack, but he's playing it as well. It's I just love stuff like that.
So, I can see that vividly in my mind, and you've actually got me wanting to watch that film again.
Yeah, well, I
actually.
mean, I watch it every year or two.
Yeah.
And then I watched 2047 as well, which was
yes.
absolutely... when I first came to Hong Kong in 1990, I was like, fuck, this is Blade
Neon
Runner.
lights.
This is Blade Runner. It's like
yeah.
pouring with rain, and you're walking around, and there's neon lights everywhere, and there's people eating noodles at outdoor shops.
Yes.
And I just thought, this is Blade Runner.
Yeah.
And they're still, and I think they definitely were
Still,
affected by
elements
that.
of
And
that.
the multiple languages you heard and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But I mean, both of them they're also about what it means to be alive.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's not just science fiction. It's not about. And all my favourite movies are about what.
They're a bit deeper than that, aren't they?
It's about
more
things
on
to
a
be.
basic level.
Yeah, it's about what it takes to be alive. I mean, another one of my favourite movies is The Big Lebowski.
I was going to say this to you. I can pretty much name your top 10.
Yeah,
I think,
you
'cause
probably
we
can.
would
You
share it,
probably
I'm
can,
sure.
yeah.
Yeah.
Which is hilariously funny movie,
Oh.
but at the same time, it's about what it is to be alive. And I think I've got this theory about The Big Lebowski that I've never heard anybody else mention, but I think it's based on The Big Sleep by Raymond Chandler.
Okay, interesting.
Because Raymond Chandler's hero, Philip Marlowe, he's actually a loser.
Yes,
right?
yes, very much.
He drinks.
Yeah.
And he can't get it on. He never has a permanent relationship.
Yeah,
but then
he's not
if
wealthy.
you actually look at, he's not wealthy.
No.
And but then if you look at the actual things in the plot that happen in The Big Sleep, so like he has basically this really rich bloke comes to him and asks him to find his son. In the book, it's his daughter.
Yes.
And she's got an older sister, and he has a relationship with the older sister. In The Big Lebowski, it's his wife he wants him to find.
Yes.
And he gets slipped a Mickey Finn at one stage.
He does, doesn't
right?
he? Yeah.
And there's that amazing bit in it where
Yeah.
he's floating in The Big Lebowski, where he's floating.
Yeah.
I mean, Wim Wenders' Wings of Desire. And the reason why I brought up the Big Lebowski is because it's the Coen brothers, and the Coen brothers have got so many great movies that, and a lot of them are just about what it means to be alive.
Preferred drink?
Well, it depends on time of day.
Depends on time of day,
So
okay.
start with tea, then
Start
coffee.
with tea, yeah.
And afternoon when the sun's shining and you're outdoors with your mates, it's like beer, right?
Yeah.
And then if you're gonna,
Yeah.
well, then food, I like a glass of wine. So,
Yes. Yeah, me too. Do you have a life motto?
No.
No. Well, that's fair. Well, no is a motto.
Go into everything with an open mind, which also includes people.
Yes.
Most important.
I agree.
The social part of life, your friends and family are the absolutely most important paramount things in life, which when you're a teenager you don't really think about.
You haven't got time for it, have you, really?
Time, right?
Right, here we go. So this might be harder for you. Favourite Hong Kong walk? Don't tell me you bike it everywhere.
Well, there's so many of them. I mean, because of where I live, it's got to be over Lantau Peak, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because I live right in front of it.
Yes.
But I mean, when I used to live on Hong Kong, and we used to, in the 90s, used to do the walk from Happy Valley to Shek O.
Yeah.
Over
Nice.
the top,
Dragon's
and
Back.
Stop at what's that restaurant called? Black Sheep.
Yeah.
And
Hong Kong restaurant. Favourite Hong Kong restaurant? Do you have one or two or 10?
my kitchen.
Your kitchen, yeah, the pizza oven. Boom.
I mean, I like cooking. And,
Yeah.
wherever the house is in Japan, there's so many tiny little restaurants run by one or two people.
Yeah, they do it well, don't
And
they?
the food is just mind-blowingly good and not expensive. It's like half the price of Hong Kong. So,
Yeah, really.
So since I've been going there, I find I really struggle with Hong Kong food. But I mean, there's a couple. I mean, the Globe we go to for company. And, But the food's good as well. And
Good comfort food, isn't it?
Fiata in Central does really good pizza. I like going to the China Beach Club because
Yes.
Julie and Rachel always.
Yeah.
I missed you there last weekend.
Yeah, we both were there 2
by about
days.
10 minutes. But we can also go to the gallery in Tom Ford.
Yeah. Grumpy Dave.
Grumpy Dave. Mercurial Dave.
Mercurial Dave, as he's now become, is it?
You know, but also outside in the kitchen. I mean.
Yes.
Oh, and Pollo and Ciao Bella and Pollo. That's really good.
Yeah.
Actually, that's my new favourite on Lantau.
Yeah. Yeah, there's some good local shout-outs there, I think.
Yeah.
And I'd agree with all of those. We're nearly through this 10 questions, Pete. You remember the ones you didn't want to answer?
Yeah.
Remember, it's those, Pete.
What, 10?
Exactly.
10?
What are you doing? What are you doing with your life? Right, best advice you were given. Probably something I've said to you, isn't it? I would imagine. Well, our generation didn't remember advice. If it was something our fathers said, we would ignore it probably.
Yeah, but nobody really told you stuff when we were young.
No.
And,
it was more of an interactive, whack round the head generation, I think. We've come from.
I mean, when my sister had kids before the rest of us, and she used to hug them and give them loads of love. And we were kind of in a little bit of shock about that because nobody else did.
No,
we didn't do that.
No,
right?
that's
when we were young. And then about 10 years later, when they in their teens, the kids, my mum started hugging us, and she'd basically learnt it from my sister.
Yeah.
And it was like, oh, okay then.
I think that happened in my family as well.
And so you kind of got
sisters.
used to it, and eventually we started hugging her dad as well, and he took a bit of warming up.
Well, that's exactly. My dad was the same. Not a hugger.
It's not really something anybody said to me, but it's
it's received, it's learned, isn't it? And I think that is. Yeah, I quite like the fact that it's the best advice you were given was actually a physical change in how you greeted people or whatever. I think that's very valid. Actually, that's cool.
It's
I'll go with that, mate.
Definitely.
I'll go with that.
Yeah.
Finish this sentence. I live in Hong Kong because, and this might be a deep thing.
Right. So we got a couple of hours, right? When we're going to the Barbican with my then girlfriend on a rainy day in about 1988 or something, and there was this photo exhibition by a Japanese photographer, pictures of the Great Wall of China.
Okay.
And they were huge prints. They were like maybe 4 meters by 2 meters or bigger. Maybe there were even. No, I think there was one or two that were like absolutely massive. And the Barbican, it was a big gallery. And then, around the same time, there was an article in Independent on Sunday magazine about Kowloon Walled City. Which kind of intrigued me.
Yeah,
and,
God.
And I was reading about the handover and everything, and it was 10 years before, right? So, or maybe it's just probably maybe 89 or something.
Yeah.
And so I was kind of intrigued by Hong Kong at that stage. Best mate, coincidentally, his dad was Alan Braden, who ran the Alan Braden Orchestra.
Yes.
Who did the music for the City Show,
Sooty
Show, and named that tune, and multiple Thames TV shows through the 60s and 70s and 80s. And Phil was the same age as me. He's he's a day or two younger than me, and he was working at TVAM. In Camden, which was the first breakfast show, right?
Yeah.
And he was an assistant shop steward, and they went on strike for seemingly, and even he said it was ridiculous because they got paid so much money. So anyway, he got blacklisted, and he got a job in the New Territories, working for this little TV company in Fanling. And the guy who owned the TV company also was a co-owner of part of the transponder on AsiaSat, which eventually became Sky TV. And at the time, all he knew was that they were going to open this satellite TV station. And he said, Pete, come to Hong Kong, we're going to be opening this satellite TV station.
Oh my God.
And you can come and work in the audio department, because I'd been working in a recording studio, but it all turned to shit in the late 80s. I came out, and by then he was running this audio place, and they were beginning to set up the satellite station, and he was head of the technical department of the satellite TV station, and he said, look, I can't. So I came out, and the end of my then girlfriend, who was a civil engineer, heard about a vacancy in her company which was Ovarup in the Hong Kong office,
Okay.
and they were employing people because they were building the new airport. And well, I mean, it hadn't even been announced at that stage.
Yeah.
But they were building all kinds of stuff. I mean, they built the Hong Kong Bank and
Yes.
loads of things, right? HSBC, which is now
Yeah.
headquarters of HSBC.
Headquarters.
And so she said, yeah, I want to go. And I said, okay, I'm going to go. So I came out, and he said, oh, well, I can't give you a job just yet, but we've worked with these music companies, so go and see them. And like two of them were music companies, and they both offered me a job, and another one was made all the TV stuff on Cathay, Emphasis, and they offered me a job as well. So I went with the coolest music company that was writing music for TV adverts. And after I'd been there for a month, they said, "Oh, you write music as well. You should be writing music, not just a sound engineer," because they gave me a job as a sound engineer. And then a few years later, we set up our own. Me and Eddie left and set up our own company.
Right.
So
Okay. So there it is.
Yeah, never had a job in my life.
Yeah, a proper job, as
Never
you've
had a
always
proper
said.
job. Yeah.
But that was where drum music came from.
Yeah.
Brilliant. And what a great place to come to, Hong Kong in the late 80s, early 90s.
So, when I was
Heaven.
thinking about in London and thinking about coming, because I didn't have anything in London then, I said, I'll go to Hong Kong and just give it a year.
Yeah. See, like everybody says, don't they?
34 years later, here I am.
Yeah, 34 years. There you go. So it's a long love affair that you have with Hong Kong. One last question: favourite area of Hong Kong?
Oh, it's Lantau, isn't it?
Gotta be. Where else would it be?
I've actually spent longer on Lantau than I have at any other place.
Yeah, really.
In my life. Yeah.
Okay.
So I was born in Bromley, and we lived in that area of Kent. It was then Kent until I was 6 or 7, and then I moved to Hertfordshire.
Yeah.
In '67, and I moved.
Where were you in Hertfordshire?
In a little village, like halfway between St Albans, Luton, and Stevenage.
Okay, yeah.
And I went to school in St Albans, and but so I was there for 12 years, and then I was in London. I went to London in 1979, 1980, and I was there for 10 years. And then I came to Hong Kong. I was on Hong Kong Island for I moved around. So I was in Happy Valley for about 8 or 9 years, and then we moved to above North Point for a couple of years, and then back to Happy Valley for a couple of years, and then if you count the two places I've lived on Lantau, and they're only like 2 kilometres apart, that's like 18 years now. 18 years. So it's longer than anywhere else.
Yeah. The purpose of this interview is that Pete's got a couple of projects underway in the last few months, and one is Electro Moore, and the other one is his new latest Celestial album. So can I just ask you to talk through those?
I'll start with Celestial because I've been doing it for so long. So Celestial, I started making music with the first company that I was consultant at in early 90s. I started making music there, and I met the guy. There's an American guy who was running MCA in Hong Kong then.
Okay.
And he heard a couple of the tracks that I'd done, and he said, "Oh, we should release this." So I did I finished an album, and I'd come up with the name Celestial, and then a friend of mine's wife, who worked in advertising, came up with the Cantonese version of that, which is Tinsa, which means up in the sky. It means celestial, basically.
Okay.
And then the first album came out in '96 on MCA, and it was Spirit House.
Yes. Yeah. These are all stocked at Vibe, by the way.
Yeah, and the original version on MCA actually went gold in Singapore.
Yeah, I read that only this morning, actually.
Yeah,
what does it take to go gold in Singapore?
I think 7,500
pounds.
I mean, they were still on sales of CDs then.
Yeah.
So, well, I mean,
that's pretty impressive.
Yeah, well,
actually, isn't it?
Basically, they managed to get it onto the local radio station there.
That's what made me wonder how it got traction there.
Yeah, so I mean, I still talk to people. I mean, an Indonesian DJ who must have been a kid then contacted me about a month ago about the new album, and he said, "Yeah, I got into Celestial with the first album." And
God, isn't that brilliant?
Yeah, he must have been a kid, or maybe his brothers had it or something.
To hear that you've influenced somebody's life. Yeah, music at that age, as you were saying earlier, the influential years, aren't they? I mean, that's some achievement.
Well, the best one though is, like, when that came out, I got an email from this guy. He says, "Hi, my name's Peter. I bought your album in an airport. I'm in Stockholm at the moment." I said, "Oh, great." I replied, I said, "Great, thank you very much." He said, "I love it." I said, "Oh, thank you very much. That's the best thing anybody can say is when you get
some praise.
Feedback like that is for somebody like that is the best thing that can happen."
Well, taking the effort to do it, because there's liking something and enjoying it, but two, to take the extra time to feed that back to the artist. Yeah, because you didn't ask for his money back, so that was a good positive.
But then 5 years later, he said, he sent me another email. I said, "Oh, you remember me?" I said, "Oh, yeah, how you doing?" I said, "Here we go." And he says, "Actually, I'm in a band now, and I wonder if you want to help us do some remixes or something." And
wow.
I said, "Okay." So what's the band called? He said, "Blonde from Fargo." I was like, "Huh?" and then he told me his name. His name is Peter Stormare. And then I realised that he's an actor who's a Hollywood actor called Peter Stormare, or we'd pronounce it Stormare, I think. Yeah. And he was in Fargo. He was the killer in Fargo.
No.
And he was also the nihilist in The Big Lebowski.
No.
And he's
Coen Brothers.
God. And he's been in loads of movies, and he's still in movies now, and I'm still in touch with him all the time. So
that's fantastic.
But anyway, that was that just goes to show that
that
you, when you do reply to somebody and you keep in touch with them, you should. Again, that's probably advice for you.
Yeah.
Never fob somebody off.
Yeah.
Talk to everybody.
Okay, so that's Celestial. How many albums have you?
Well, first one was Spirit House. That was 1996, and then 2001. So MCA had kind of turned into Universal, and that guy Greg had moved on somewhere else. So I was no longer connected to MCA, and we managed to get the rights off of them for the first album. They let it go.
Right.
And I released Happy Valley on myself. That was the second album, and first released myself.
Yeah.
And then we re-released Spirit House as well ourselves.
Yeah. Okay.
With a new sleeve, because the guy who designed the sleeve didn't really want us to use it. Even though it was really nice, but But anyway, and then so that was 2001 was Happy Valley, and then 2003 was Hong Kong Dub Station, and then 2007 was Electric Road, then 2009 was Cloud Songs.
Oh yes.
And then 2014 was Return to the Dub Station.
Yeah.
And then 2017 was Retrospect.
On vinyl.
At
Vibe.
Yeah. So the first six are all on CD.
Yes.
And then Retrospect was on vinyl only. After COVID started, we went for a staycation at the Mandarin Hotel that somebody managed to get us a free room at, and it's for my wife Tomoko's birthday. And we were in the room, and I think our daughter just turned on the music on the TV, and it was this kind of laid-back, chilled-out Asian music, and I thought, I can do that, but better.
Yeah.
So I decided to revisit some of the melodies that I'd recorded on various Asian instruments over the previous, but I still had a lot. The first album I've only got a couple of the recordings of, because it was on tape, and I never kept the tape. Somebody else had it, and we kind of fell out. So, but everything else I was recorded onto hard drives. So I got all the recordings of the original instruments that I got in. So it was like Erhu is my favourite.
Yeah, me too, actually.
In the early 90s, I met a trio from Nepal, from Kathmandu, called Sir Sudar,
Yes.
who played sitar, tabla and flute, and I recorded, they're on the first album, and then they came to Hong Kong in 2003 and I recorded them again and we organised some gigs. I can't remember who I met first, whether it was Sonny or Emiko, but they knew each other. So Sonny is Hong Kong Chinese, but he went to college in Australia, and he's extremely talented. He's CEO now of one of the very big companies in Hong Kong, but he's a shakuhachi player, and he learned shakuhachi in Australia and in Japan from an Australian guy, and he'd met Emiko, I think, here. That's how. So Emiko Hisada was she was basically a housewife who was also could play koto really well.
What's a koto?
Koto is like the Japanese version of a guzheng, which is like a harp, but
string instrument.
Seven strings.
Yeah.
And then after she went back, and then there was a visiting koto player from Japan who came every couple of years, Sawako Fukada, I think, and so we recorded her as well. And then Eugene Power I knew because he also worked at the same company that I first was involved with. Eugene Power is he's Asia's best known jazz guitar player and an all-round nice guy. And another guy from that company was Dave Packer, who played piano and harmonica, and they're both stalwarts of the old jazz club in the 90s in Lantau.
But then we get to the stage where we're coming up towards COVID. Is
so
that the time you recorded Albatross, or was this pre-Albatross?
Oh no, so Albatross wasn't Celestial.
Right.
That was our rock band.
That
were called Dub Station. I just thought I'd call it that. But basically, I wrote all the songs and I played guitar.
Yeah.
And a couple of the songs had been on Celestial albums, but we were a rock band with a drummer and a bass player and me on guitar and Adrian Da Silva, who's one of the best singers in Hong Kong, and a really guitar player as well.
Sort of Radiohead-ish, isn't he?
Yeah.
He's got a great voice.
Incredible, and so we've started playing in the Wunsch and a few other places, and we recorded that came out before COVID, but 2017 or 18, I can't remember.
So the bands thing is a good outlet, I think, isn't it? And it's a good spin-off.
Yeah.
But as you say, what you're doing is you're spinning some of the Celestial tunes and mixing them with some of the Dub Station influence stuff, aren't you?
Well, so Celestial, I started doing live using Ableton, which is this bit of software that enables you to play live little lots of snippets of little tracks that you can do it live, so you're playing almost on the fly and you're mixing on the fly. You're mixing, so basically I was mixing dub versions of all the tracks on the fly, and that started in the first gig was 2004, and I basically, because I got asked to go to Kuala Lumpur to do a gig, so that's why I thought, I better work out how to do this then, and so we did it. So I've been doing that ever since. Most recently was like earlier this year when I played at a little music festival at Arc Eden up the valley just here.
Yes.
And I played at the Island Festival last November, as you recall.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
So that's how I got into Ableton, and that's what Mike and I use in Electromool, is that we have Ableton. But Ableton also we have our analog synthesizers, which I got into again just before COVID. I bought one, and then me and Mike were going to do something then, but we couldn't because of COVID. So that's when because I couldn't do much, I recorded 2 of the albums of the really chilled out Asian stuff under Celestial. So I called them, because as I was doing reggae dub versions of Asian dub, I called it, for Celestial for quite a few years. When I heard this chill stuff, I decided to make it more, no longer reggae, but more soundtrack style.
Okay.
Because also I was listening to the Blade Runner soundtrack by Hans Zimmer, which has got elements of the earlier one, and synths and it's very chill and ambient as well. And so I thought, well, if I do this Asian chill stuff, and I put in some inspirations from Hans Zimmer and Blade Runner.
Yeah. Nice.
So I was, because originally, so the previous albums, a lot of the tracks were called dub version of things that I'd done before.
Yeah.
And because Hans Zimmer, he has a lot of sub-bass sounds like that, kind of industrial noises and booms. So instead of doing dub versions, I decided that they would be sub versions. So the first album that came out in the beginning of 22 was Sub Versions Volume 1.
Yes.
And then I had so much material left over from that I did another album that same year of Subversions Volume 2. So then I still had some material left, and I still had things I wanted to work on. I started getting ready to play live again, and then Mike and I started thinking about Electromool. So it took me a bit longer to do what was going to be Subversions Volume 3.
Yeah.
But I kind of decided that I wasn't going to do any more of this thing that I do for Celestial after this. So this is going to be the last one.
Okay.
So I was going to call it something like finale, and then I was looking at musical terms for that, and then coda is another musical term for the end of something. Subversions Volume 3 Coda, and I just thought that's far too long. So eventually that's why the album is called Sub Coda.
Sub Coda, right? Okay, so that explains a lot.
Which is nice and easy.
Gotcha.
Right?
Okay. And we're listening a little to some of that now, actually.
Yes, in the background, isn't it? Yeah. And so the music has changed quite a bit as well because of some of what some of the other stuff I've been doing now. One of which I'll talk about later, which is Electromool, and basically there's more synths in that. And so one of the synths I bought, which kind of started Electromool, is featured quite a lot in Sub Coda, in Volume 3. And and so but I actually think it's the most successful of all of them. I'm really happy with it, I have to say.
Yeah.
So it's got a sound that I think that is a little bit more individual, put it that way.
Yeah, very definitely. And actually having that explanation of how you got there, taking out the reggae elements and making it a bit more filmatic actually explains a lot to me, having known the rest of your body of work. So,
I mean, well, if you go back all the way to the first album which came out, the first Celestial album, Spirit House, which came out in '96, even on that there was a couple of bits where I was playing piano that was kind of inspired by Philip Glass. And then that kind of grew more and more all the way through them. But it's all the way through all of the albums. So so now the piano is kind of taken over, and it's playing very kind of Philip Glass inspired versions of the melodies. But with synthesizers as well. So, you go back to the first album, there is analog synthesizers gurgling away behind a lot of it.
Nice.
So there is actually
great sound.
You can actually follow all the way through. But at the same time, it's changed. So I'm kind of quite satisfied the way that it has evolved and changed, but also remained true to what it was.
Kept on a certain theme.
It's developed and changed, but it's definitely it is a theme. It's music that I make, and it sounds like music that I make, because if you know anything about me, it's that's my influences.
With all your influences, as we discussed earlier on in the interview, which also kind of echo mine as well. I think that's perhaps why it so well speaks to me. I love it, and I, having listened to Sub Coda a number of times now, I do get all those references going back, and they're sort of they're old friends. They're nice to hear reworked. And I've got some of my own particular favourites in there, and the things like the Green Island dub, which this podcast uses.
features on Sub Coda under the new title Lost Island. Green Island was on Electric Road, and then on Retrospect was Green Island Dub. That was the dub version of
which I'd love.
And then the sub version is on Sub Coda, which I mean, you can go and listen to all three. I think they all sound completely different. But they've got some elements all that hold them together as well.
Yeah,
it's the melodies really that are the things that hold them together.
Yeah. And that is, am I right in thinking that's inspired by Lantau Island, the green island that we live on? Or
very much so, yeah. I was living on Lantau when I did the first version.
Yeah.
It is a pentatonic Chinese-style melody. So.
Yeah. And you know, you and I have both walked, and you particularly have cycled more on this island, every corner of it, every hill of it, and it really does seem to echo there. Yeah. In my mind.
Yeah. Well, I've spent longer on Lantau than anywhere else in the world at this
stage.
So,
yeah. Not a bad prison to live in, is it? Really?
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay, so Sub Coda is out now. It's available on Spotify and all the usual, Bandcamp and all these type of platforms.
Yeah. About an hour long. It's got a flow about it, I think, which it's nice to actually listen to the whole lot in order. And people don't really do that anymore, unfortunately. You know, well, particularly young people, they listen to single tracks.
So,
I mean, us old people, we like to listen to an album all the way through.
A body of work, a biorhythm that's been designed by a composer. Absolutely. Okay, and then we'll move on to one of your other projects, Pete, Electro Mool.
Yeah. So my old friend Mike, who also lives on Lantau, who we've known for quite a while, we both, and I've been using analog synthesizers since the 70s, and so we were just talking, wouldn't it be great to do a live thing using synthesizers, and I'd kind of started doing a little bit with Celestial, because Mike's a bit more dance music based, so and so we decided, okay, we'll do something that's more based on the electro of the 1980s kind of thing, but a modern version of it, right? We go out, we've got like 5 or 6 synthesizers. I mean, there's always one coming and going as it's still evolving. We've played 3 gigs so far, and I'm writing songs all the time. I've finished 2 last week, and I've got another 2 on the go. So Mike does a lot of the rhythm programming, and the synthesizer knob twiddling, and I'm writing the words and doing the vocalizing and also programming some of the synthesizers as well. So, and I'm trying to make the music as interesting as possible for. I mean, I like things that are musically interesting rather than just one chord. You know. Yeah. A lot of house music is 2 chords. It gets really dull. Right?
Yeah.
So.
So I mean, so in my mind, the way this sort of happened is 2 geeks in a bedroom come up with some electro music, and then your first gig, I'm proud to say, was at Vibe a couple of months ago, and you can see that on our YouTube channel, live at Vibe HK. So that was the very first one. You then graduated, I think, to a garden party.
Yes. we went big time.
And then from the garden party, you went to no less the Lantau Live main stage. Headlining band.
Yeah, well, we were the last on because we were probably the only people where everybody in the band lived on Lantau.
Yes,
so we didn't really have to leave early. So. But yeah. So and even in that short space of time, which was only about 5 weeks in between the first gig and Lantau Live, we actually it was, I think it was a month or maybe 2 months. But anyway, we actually changed. We've added quite a lot of new stuff. So basically, the original idea was that I'd use a vocoder to do the vocals all through vocoder.
Yes.
And I wouldn't sing. I'd just vocode it. And if you don't know what a vocoder is where you put 2 things you put a synthesizer and a voice in, and the vocoder merges them, so it creates a kind of robotic sounding tone, but you can just about hear the words, and then you play the notes on the keyboard. but then I started kind of doing some spoken word bits, and then Mike has encouraged me to actually try and sing a bit, which I'm not really a singer at all, but I can just about get away with it if it's only one or two notes.
And it's merged with a vocoder.
So I've been doing more stuff where there's not so much vocoder, but it's actually got a bit more inspired by a lot of spoken word stuff. I wouldn't say rap exactly, but more like
well, to me, Ian
Jury,
with a backing thing, but a spoken vocal type of thing, isn't it?
I mean, there's been a few.
So Gil Scott Heron,
because he does that, but he's also talking about. He's commenting on what's happening at the moment, and that's what we said right at the beginning. We're going to comment on life today. So there's a lot of that, and so we comment on social media and all the weird stuff that's going on in the world, conspiracy theories and slightly more contentious issues like gun ownership in the States and or gun violence particularly, I guess. And
so not overly political, more life.
It's more life oriented. We're trying to stay away from specifically political. Because, number one, it's only got a very short time scale.
Yes.
I mean, politicians are gone usually. But I mean, there's so many things I've realised that you can talk about, and I mean, if you're just talking about life as well. So I keep writing stuff. But there's a genre of music which started about 10 years ago called electro punk, and I think it's actually becoming more electro punk now.
Right. So, interesting.
Which again, it's me, right?
Right?
After everything we talked about.
Yeah, absolutely. Right? And me as well. It speaks to me.
But there's people like the Sleaford Mods and a whole range of people now. I don't know if Sleaford Mods really fit into electro punk, but they certainly we share some similarities, and I've definitely been inspired by the things of what they do as well.
Yes.
So I'm actually really enjoying the challenge of writing, and I'm just coming up with. I'm just constantly writing little couplets, write words down, and bits of. Almost poetry, but it's not really. It's not poetry in the classical sense. Although one of the tracks that we just we've started putting down now, we've taken some lines directly from Dylan Thomas's "Do not go gently into that night."
Okay.
Rage against the dying of the light.
Okay.
So because on January 1st, 2024, that poem entered the public domain, which means that anybody can use it.
Okay.
So,
that's good.
So I basically.
there's plenty for you there.
I actually sing a couple of the lines, those two lines basically over and over.
Yeah.
And there's one line that says, "Old age should rave and burn and rave at close of day."
I love it.
It's got rave in it. So that's
good. Speaks well.
So we kind of the track is kind of a little bit ravey. It's got a 606 type bass sound, and but hopefully we can make it our own as well. So,
So Electro Mole, you're sort of beginnings now. You've had 3 live gigs. Are there plans to record, go have a recording studio and get something down? Or?
We basically we can record. These days you can record at home, right?
You can record here in Vibe. Would be great.
Unlike Celestial, we decided to not do release whole albums. Because it's going to take. Knowing the way we work, it's going to take over a year to get a whole album out. So we're going to release a series of 3-track EPs.
Yeah. Oh yes. Okay. Right.
And the target to get the first 3 tracks out is April the 1st.
Okay.
2020,
no joke.
2025. Exactly. Which I thought was quite fitting. So, part of the joke is Elektromüll is German for electronic rubbish, which we think is funny.
Elektromüll.
So hopefully the first EP will be out. I'm not quite sure what it's going to be titled yet.
Well, surprise us, I would say.
Dum Dums or maybe Echo, I'm not sure, but anyway, something like that.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
All right, so we'll look forward to release in the next sort of 3 months, right, basically,
Hopefully,
of that.
Fingers crossed.
And any other projects that you've got bubbling under, or you're thinking about?
There's also this ongoing project that I've had with Vibe regular Andy Tate.
Yes.
Which is based on we've got a song, what I've written, to use an Ernie Wise joke, about the Ernest Shackleton expedition where that all went horribly wrong, but he managed to get everybody safely back to South Georgia without losing any of the 28 people on his ship. Endurance went down. Yeah. He got caught in the ice and then sank as it got crushed by the ice. But he managed to get all 28 people safely back home after like months of being on the ice floe and eating nothing but blubber, basically. So it's an amazing story. Yeah. And we're gonna add 2 more songs, I think, to that, and release an EP. That's taken a lot of time because of all the other stuff I've got doing.
I guess it's back burner to Electro Mull.
Yeah.
But I've heard you sing some of those lyrics here, and it sounds like a very interesting project to me. I think it's going to be something great to get out there.
I think it's it can sit on the back burner a little bit because it's not really. It happened like nearly 100 years ago. No, over 100 years ago that the ship went down. So yeah. So I think another year or two.
It's not going anywhere.
No.
Is it? Yeah.
I've still occasionally get bits of paid work to do.
Nice. Well, you got to keep the coffers.
Like I'm mastering an album at the moment, and I've got a little documentary that hopefully will end up on a streaming service soon. Which is kind of quite a serious subject, but I won't go on about it until a bit more happens.
Good. All right. So just going onto your media platforms, where do people do you sort of regularly publish on your Celestial platforms and stuff?
Well, I have a website which is hongkongdubstation.com.
Yeah.
Hong Kong Dub Station, all one word.com, and I do occasionally put stuff on there, but I'm not that.
Not that prolific. Okay, so people can go there to get some updates on where you're at with things.
But we will get I think an Instagram account and maybe a Facebook band page up and going at some stage as well.
That would make sense.
That's you kind of have to do all these things these days.
Yeah.
And Electrum will hopefully will be playing in the Wanch. That's the next plan. And Mike is very, very busy with all the things that he does. But hopefully spring is a time when he's got a bit more time on his hands. So that's why we're kind of just in the process of rearranging our set and adding 2 more tracks to it. So hopefully in the next 2 months we'll be playing it at the Wanch. And we're going to be looking for some more electro-punk style bands or electro bands to play with us. So I need to go out and do a bit of research. Talk to Crispy.
Get a bit of a theme going on a circuit. Okay. All right. Well, we'll leave it there, I think, Pete, and just thank you for coming in today, and
maybe we come back here and do another gig in a few months' time.
We're always open to that. Absolutely.
And when we've kind of got the new set up and running, that would be quite. I think that would kind of make sense.
Okay. All right. Pete Millward, thanks for coming in today.
Well, thank you, Gary, for having me. It's been very interesting chatting, as always.
You can listen to all our VIBErations podcasts published on Spotify, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Podbean, Amazon Music, Tuner and Alexa, Stitcher, Listen Notes, Player FM, SoundCloud and a few others. Or you can watch on our YouTube channel under Live at Vibe HK, or follow the links from my website VIBEhk.com. The opening and closing music comes from Celestial and is called Green Island Dub, and is on the Retrospect vinyl album on sale at Vibe. Finally, a reminder that Vibe is open 7 days a week, every day of the year, from 12 noon until approximately 6:30 p.m. Thanks for listening to the 53rd Vibe Book and Music Shop podcast called VIBErations. I'm Gary Brightman. You get my vibe?
Can you imagine what this old island must have looked like to those Dutch sailors when they first saw it? Fresh green. Like a dream of a new world.
They must have held their breath, afraid it would disappear before they could touch it.